Hello, everybody. I am Mike Young, and I am an introvert. Let's get that out of the way immediately, okay? I've been wanting to make this video for a while, and some of you who've watched my channel, adigitalnomad.net, may not believe me that I'm an introvert, but I definitely am an introvert. In fact, I am one of the most extreme introverts there are, and I need to explain because you may not understand. You may not believe me. Another reason why I want to keep this up here the whole time making this video is so that you remember I am an introvert. I got a few notes here too. First of all, let's start out by giving you an accurate definition of what an introvert actually is. And in my mind, this is the only correct definition. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. And, just write down below in the comments if you disagree, agree, whatever. But basically, an introvert is someone who gets their energy by being alone, usually in quiet spaces, like I am right now. Even though I'm making a video, this is like therapy for me, being alone. Okay. Being in quiet spaces. I know a lot of people I've talked to over the years have said, have mentioned, let's say, the concept of solitary confinement, which I find really attractive. Okay. And people are like, people go insane. You don't ever wish you were in solitary confinement. You'd kill yourself, or you'd want to kill yourself, or you'd wish you were dead, or some kind of combination of this. I'm like, no way. No, I don't think so. For an introvert, I think that's how you really can tell an introvert. Talk about the concept of solitary confinement and see how somebody reacts to them envisioning spending a large amount of time there. I mean, I've come a long way in my journey too. Even as an introvert, it's been a journey because, like, if as I said earlier in this video a minute or two ago, I am an extreme introvert. I'm not just a regular one. And you're like, well, Mike, how can you possibly be out there making all these videos? How can you possibly be all on social media, be talking to people, have all these friendships and relationships? Oh, and by the way, we did like 25 outdoor public festivals, large scale, in the last 2 years. 25. Well, it's none of the, so a lot of these things that you would think you would not necessarily equate with being an introvert, and they appear like more extroverted type of activities. The reason why I'm in them is, I say, two reasons. Number one is I've had to learn skills to be able to do those, for sure. The other thing is I'm only doing them as a means to an end because I'm trying to accomplish something else, and really that's the best way I know of how to do it. Put my notes here. Does this make sense? If it does, please let me know down below. And if you're an introvert, let me know. And actually, let me know where you are in your journey, because I want to describe in this initial video, because I'll be making follow-up videos. I want to describe how far I have evolved in my journey as an introvert. I have some notes here. Now, for one thing, I'd say I used to be super nervous. I used to do anything I could do to get away from people, because to me, people are like energy vampires, if that makes sense. For extroverts, it's the opposite. It's like extroverts gain their energy by being around and gathering the energy of other people. I'm the opposite. You get me around enough people for too long, I'm just like, I got to get out. Okay. So I used to spend almost all of my time, I think I remember growing up, avoiding people. And there were so many situations, like when you're growing up, you can't avoid people, you have to be like, if you're in a traditional school setting, which was really the only choice back in the day, there was no homeschooling, or if you were a complete, from another planet, insane, family that should all be locked up. Apparently, that's what I was word on the street when I was growing up. So I was in regular school, and I would much prefer, by the way, homeschool. Any introvert, I think, would say that, unless there was some kind of specifically designed school for introverted personalities. I don't know. All right. So I used to kind of shy away from people. And let's say, for instance, I'm a guy, I'm a heterosexual guy. I'm interested in girls, especially good looking girls that I find attractive, especially those. If I think back, I would get super nervous, beyond nervous, nervousness that you probably cannot comprehend unless you're an introvert and are someone like me that was constantly trying to get away from people, even though I was put in all these situations where I had to be around people. And cold sweats, that was a thing I'd say was very common with, especially if it was around girls. But it wasn't just only girls. It was other situations, like if I had to give a speech or something, it was like a cold sweat. I'm telling you, there would be a cold sweat. You know what I'm talking about? If you do, let me know in the comments, please. I want to know if there's other people out there that were impacted by this. And I'd say, like, if I had to go like a time frame of when this affected me the most, it would probably be from elementary school, middle school, high school. I'd say by the time college rolled around, I discovered, I think, alcohol. And one of the bad things is you can remove yourself from yourself when you drink it. And for introverts, you might not even you might forget for a little while that you're an introvert. I'm not promoting alcohol by any means. In fact, I don't think it's good at all. I think it's got horrible, horrible negative consequences, even though almost everyone tries to tell you that it's not that bad. Don't believe them. They're all either drinking themselves, or they're in the restaurant industry, or they're in some kind of other business, which is almost all businesses that sell alcohol for money. Okay. But anyway, the idea was that was the only time I was okay. And I realized at a certain time, I think like by the time, especially middle and high school and puberty and all this stuff, I realized I have to do something. Like, either I'm just going to be like this because I recognize who I am. Did you let me know in the comments, did you recognize who you were? What age did you realize it? Did you start a process? Because that's what I want to describe to you guys, to you all, is that I did start a process. I'm like, I don't want to be like this. I see other people. Like, I would look around at other people and I'm like, almost everybody else is better at this social thing, and hopefully I appear that I have some social skills nowadays, because I didn't have any in the past. And I remember looking around at people and saying, man, they're so good at that. They're so good at that. How can they do that? Now, a lot of it is because they don't have introverted personalities. They didn't have introverted personalities. So they didn't have the barriers or the hurdles that they had to jump over for every conversation like I did. And also, in a lot of ways, too, it's more than just that. It's like, who raised you? If I look back at my parents, I wasn't really instructed in social skills, I'd say, which would have been an amazing thing, like regular, continual construction on social skills, noting improvements, pointing out challenges, things to work on, that kind of stuff. But I did see, other people who were very good with social skills. I'm talking about guys specifically, because I was a guy. I wanted to, if I'm gonna find some girl that's going to be interested in me and she's interested in all these other guys, I got to find out the way that they are and what are the attractive things about their personalities and what can they do. And of course, I could do none of them. Basically, all the stuff that I did, I had to learn, because not only was I not taught this by anyone, I didn't have a mentor in this area, but I was hurting. I would not be able to ever talk to or see these girls that I wanted to see, or advance in anything. I realized this. Okay. Look, keep in mind, I'm 53 years young now. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. There was no internet. When you called someone, you knew exactly where they were. There was no mobile phones. There were a lot of limitations. And having social skills was like interpersonal, like direct one-on-one, live in-person social skills was critical back in the day. And I didn't have any of it. Okay. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. I realized that it was critical. I had to learn this stuff. So I went through a metamorphosis, I would say. Of sorts, I'd say. Because like I said, I noticed that there were people that grew up in different households. And when I noticed that they were so good at social skills, I would, maybe I met their parents and I would say, oh my gosh, this is where they got it from. Look at the parents. they've got this whole thing figured out. They've got it all dialed in. They know how to have those conversations and the right things to say and do, the body language, all the stuff. Like, this is something that I struggled in. So I was very observant. I was trying to be a student and to learn. And that's what I would say is a key thing. If you're an introvert and you want to learn the social skills, you've got to put in the work. Now, like I said, back in the day, there was a tremendous amount of motivation. And I would never have thought that we would go from a society that was all in person, except for a telephone that nobody wanted to use because you couldn't see the person and it was very expensive. You pay by the minute and it was a lot. Okay. And you knew where that person was when you called them. You knew so much. Now you don't know anything. Now you could be talking to ChatGTP or AI or some robocalling service. They could be in India. They could be in China. They could be potentially on another planet if they have service out in space right now. I don't know. But you get the idea. Now the motivation is a lot lower. Now what I'm seeing as an introvert is that there are people who are introverted who don't have any motivation to do any better because it's not needed anymore. You can kind of opt out. And by the way, see my video that I just released today, which is called The Relationship Recession. It's about heterosexual relationships between men and women, guys and girls. So that's the thing. If me, Mike Young, was growing up right now in 2023, or a young adult, what would I be doing? Would I have any motivation to do better? But let me tell you what stopped me. I definitely took a break. Okay. This is more about my history, I suppose, since this is just the first video and an introduction to introversion and being an introvert. I found the Holy Grail. Now, a lot of things led up to me after high school and college, and I made a lot of mistakes. Would not recommend necessarily the path to anyone, especially not in 2023 with all the options and things online. But in 1990, excuse me, I got married and had my first kid. My wife and I, previous wife. And I had to earn a living. And it was in a recession, 1990. I don't know if you guys remember that. If you do, let me know in the comments. What were you doing in 1990? I was married and I had a kid in 1990. And I was an extreme introvert, trying to figure out the world that was all in person. I think that there still weren't cell phones at that point in time. I don't think, not mobile, not the handheld ones. There were car phones, I think, that were just starting to come out. They weren't like this though. So I found the Holy Grail, and guess what it was? It was a landscape business. I'd been in this business. I'd been self-employed basically since I was about 8 years old, 1978. That was the limit of my opportunities at the time. I know everybody out there now has so many opportunities. You guys with the internet and everything, limitless opportunities. It's crazy. I can't believe every kid is not in business online these days. Just reselling stuff, creating something and selling it, shipping it, whatever. That's just an easy one. Then you can do coding and developing software, all kinds of stuff, fulfilling any need. Anyone can do it. There's no age limitations. Nothing. Of course, all I could do is a landscape business. But what was great about the landscaping business was that I kind of realized, when I was doing the work, there was nobody around. I'm operating these loud machines and loud equipment, and it was just me, which is an introvert's paradise, right? So that's what I did through, late elementary, middle, and high school for money. And actually, it did pretty well. I actually was able to buy a brand new pickup truck in 1986. I made some mistakes and couldn't pay for it anymore a couple of years later, but it was a good experience, I'd say, overall. I was fortunate to be in it. In 1986, I don't think many people could do that when they were 16. All right. So there were a few, but not many. It was very, very difficult. But like I said, this business was like an introvert's paradise to me. So let me put this phone down here for a minute. Fast forward to 1990. I'm married and I have a kid. I got to figure out money. I got to get a job during a recession. I tried to get a job. I remember one of those like delivering pizzas, doing other things. I even tried selling cars at one point. None of it really worked out that well. All that stuff, if you think about it, hindsight 2020, was involving way more people time in front of people, talking, interacting one-on-one in person than my landscaping business. Because from the early days, I just tried to get agreements, especially in 1990. I'm like, okay, I got to support a family. I got to run a household. I got to financially support a household. What do I want to do? I want to get agreements, service agreements, where people are signing up for the whole season. And all I got to do is collect the money if they're going to pay me in cash when I'm there, which didn't happen that often. Actually, I didn't really want that, which is kind of weird for people. They're like, Mike, don't you want cash? I'm like, no, because that means I have to interact with you. And if you're an introvert, you know what I'm talking about, okay? I didn't want to do any of that. So I set it all up. This is before I had like a little PC and had a little schedule on my PC, and it did billing for me there. I found some specialized green industry software, which I still use to this day, which is pretty awesome. And that's why, so the computers is no problem. I can interact with computers. It's not really a person. Introverts are good with computers. I know some people say that the IT industry is made for autistic people in a way. And I don't think I'm autistic, really. I think I'm really an extreme introvert, okay? If you ask me. I just, if you believe in introversion as the opposite of extroversion, which I think that everyone I've ever met does, that's what I am. And I've had to learn my way out of this. But I've taken opportunities, and that landscape business was an opportunity. So starting in 1990, and as things went on, especially as the internet came in, I was like, oh, the internet. That means I don't need to run an ad in the newspaper anymore, and I don't need to answer phone calls. I don't even need to talk to anybody. I can just, as the late 90s rolled in, I can just have people email me. And at first, people didn't really want to use email that much. At first, people didn't even want to use text that much. But, I'm a licensed realtor. People text me all the time. It's crazy. When I first started in 2006, nobody wanted to text me. I was texting people who are like, this is unprofessional, But of course, from an introvert's perspective, of course I want to text people. If that means I don't have to talk to somebody, or I don't have to write some long email, I can just quickly get it across, perfect. That's what I want to do. And even nowadays, you can leave quick voice messages too. Those are good too as well, because there's more data to do that now. It wasn't in the past. Okay, but so basically, I kept, whenever I could, I would evolve my business into a more and more introvert friendly business where everybody signed up on agreements. I can acquire new customers through the internet. I can email them. I never have to talk to them. And there are some people that I've never ever met that I've worked for years. Keep in mind also there are some people that I did meet in person way back in the day, in the early 80s, that I still work for 40 years later. Okay. And I do talk to them from time to time, but I'm still an introvert. But I've learned a lot. Let me just say this. Let me give you some hope. If you are an introvert and you're watching this, I know that the motivation is less now, as I've just described, because nowadays you can do everything online. You can have an internet-centric lifestyle, a totally digital lifestyle, which goes along with this channel. But there's hope for you. Oh, and before I forget, please, if you're getting some value out of this video, please go down below, right over here. There's either a thanks icon button or 3 dots, and you can open up the super thanks function. And with that, you can give me any kind of donation you would like to give me, commensurate with or equal to the amount of value that you're deriving from this video. I would very, very much appreciate it. It's called super thanks. If you don't know about it, go right down here, 3 dots, or the thanks button, which opens up the super thanks function. I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right, few last points. When I talk about introversion, and I talk about me being an introvert, and I talk about me doing things a certain way, and choosing to do things in a way that is away from people, because people drain my energy, humans drain my energy. I'll always be more efficient. I think I'll always have that, even though I'm doing more things. Like I said, we did 25 festivals, outdoor public festivals, large scale festivals in the last 2 years. I've come a long way to be able to do that. I will also say that during the course of my own training, it's my own training. You have to train yourself. I don't know if there's any introvert coaches out there. Maybe there are, or maybe my channel can be it. Just make sure you like this video so it gets into the algorithm, and of course, subscribe to the channel. I'll be making more videos. on introversion and my process and different facets of that. But I'd say that during the process, I used to be to the point where I could not handle much in the way of human interaction. I would literally, it would drain me so bad. It wouldn't be a headache. And maybe sometimes I would get a headache. I don't know. But it would be like a headache, not a headache, but just like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here. I can't do this anymore. I've got to stop. And even in recent years, that's been the case. I've worked my way up to 25 festivals in 2 years. I've gotten my threshold, my tolerance level so high. I can't even tell you. It is nothing like it used to be. Keep this in mind. Even introversion, if you choose to do something about it, is an evolution. It is a process, it's a journey, and you're going to excel if you believe in your mind that you can do that, and you will. And a lot of this is goal setting, I'd say. You've got to be focusing on where you want to be in the future. You've got to imagine it actually happening. Even though you cannot comprehend how it will happen, the steps will make themselves appear if you imagine that you are actually getting there and that you will get there. And this is more about goal setting. And by the way, I have a book for free. It's called Live to 150. It's at liveto150.org. And there's a chapter in there, if you search the playlist, on goals. Okay, so read that. I would definitely, there's right ways and wrong ways to do it. And if you're an introvert and you're trying to be less introverted, you've got to use this technique. It's a lot of work. That's what I will tell you. Don't think that I'm telling you this is going to be easy, because depending upon where you are, it is the most difficult work you will ever do in your entire life. I'd say that being 53 years young and thinking about all the other work I've had to do, nothing else is more difficult. And the funny thing is, actually, and in terms of actual real work that's not mental, I'd say the landscape business is probably the toughest job you'll ever have. And everything else outside of this stuff seems easy. That's the good part. If you can do this and you can succeed and you can improve, you'll realize that you can improve at anything, which is great. And now, listen, I'm not talking about people that are operating out of fear. I see a lot of people in the world that operate out of fear. That is their main driving motivation, is fear. And people may mistake that as being introverted, and it's not. Like I said, introvert is you recharge your energy by being alone. And you drain your energy by being around other people. And yeah, that has a lot of other things that kind of relate to it. Like, yeah, I want to be away from stimulating environments because they almost always involve other people making noise. Okay? I want to be alone and in a quiet area. The more alone and the more quiet the area, the quicker I'm going to recharge my energy. But like I said, this has nothing to do with operating out of fear, because so many people will operate out of fear. These are not the same things. This is, I think, one of the reasons why people can have a hard time agreeing on exactly what the definition of introversion is. Because there's all these little things that can be mixed up or misread and things like that. So I think that's about enough for this video. Let me think of some closing thoughts. Just that I'm thankful if you watch this video, that you watched it all the way through. And like I said, I don't know where you are on your journey as an introvert, but just hopefully I provided you with some inspiration that everything is within your control in terms of your introversion and your life, and how limited it is or is not, depending upon how introverted you are and where you want to get in the future. And like I said, you have more opportunities now, actually, as an introvert. You can do less work, less mental interior work on your introversion, and still be incredibly successful at whatever you're going to do because of the internet, because you won't have to necessarily interact with many people. And this is, well, it could provide that. If you're in social media like I am, which is crazy that I'm in so many social media things, I am around so many people. Oh my gosh. But actually, that has been great. Running and managing social media groups has been great therapy for me, for having to just dive into a sea of active extroverts, okay, and have to manage them. And I can do it in doses, right? Because I'm managing these groups. I'm like, I don't want to deal with this now. I'll come back to it later. And I still do that to this day. I have to. I cannot continually do that. It's too draining. But it's great therapy. It's a great way for me to challenge myself to do better. So you've got to look at these little opportunities here and there, and they're everywhere if you know what you're looking for. So I would highly recommend that you kind of take an inventory of who you are, where you are in introversion, what you are not capable. Like I said, I used to have a very low threshold. I could be around people in a conversation for well, actually, if it was multiple people, usually the conversation I couldn't handle it for more than 10 minutes or so. I had to get out, just get out, and I got to go recharge somewhere. But almost always, I'd say, as an introvert, if there was just a one-on-one conversation with someone that's like-minded, that's very important. And actually, let me also say my wife, Denise, is an introvert. She accuses me of being an extrovert, but I'm not. Okay. We're both introverts. That's very, very important to me. I think that when I look back at other relationships I've been in, they weren't really with introverts. And that was very challenging for me, probably too challenging. Okay. But if I'm just with one person that I have a lot in common with, like my wife, then I can just be with that person. Or even if it's a new person, if I have a really intelligent conversation going on about some kind of super interesting concept, that conversation can go on indefinitely. It's very rare that that does happen, but it happens more and more nowadays because of the long tail of the internet, where you can link up with people that are of like minds that you would never connect with otherwise. So I challenge you, and I suggest that maybe consider these as some techniques that you can use to kind of grow in your introverted personality and be able to add new things to your skill set, I'd say. All right. But you're still going to have to keep in mind that you are an introvert. You're never going to get out of that. That's the thing. You never get out of it. I've done 25 festivals in the last 2 years, big outdoor public festivals. I was always looking forward to the day where I could say, we're not going to have to do this anymore. We're working on some other things now. Actually, we are, which is great, which is why I think it's a really good inflection point for me to make this video now that I've been through all these experiences and I can kind of speak from these experiences. So try to find like-minded people, people of similar interests, people who are also introverts who understand what you're talking about, because no extrovert will ever understand what you're talking about. In fact, they'll think there's something like you literally have a disorder of some type that needs to be medicated, I would say. And that couldn't be further from the truth. So much about psychology has to do with whether or not you are meeting the expected base median balance point normal of society. And we all know that society is totally screwed up. So the fact that you are not there does not indicate that there's a problem. In fact, in many cases, it will indicate that you are much, you're not okay with being just normal like that, which is bad in general, and that you want something better for yourself. So if that's the case, then I congratulate you. If there is something really wrong with you, then then what I said doesn't apply to you. But I'm also not going to be diagnosing you. You need to go see somebody else if you're concerned about that. I'm just telling you what you can do as an introvert from my own experience, because that's been my case all along. I've recognized it all along. That's why I've been different. Definitely, you guys are different. You know what I'm talking about. If you're an introvert, you're definitely different. But a lot of what you're going to get out of your life depends on what you are willing, the work you're willing to do, the growth that you're willing to go after. And I recommend that you go after all the growth that you really want. You get what you want out of life. So as an introvert, you're going to have to do a lot of work. And that's what hopefully this series of videos will inspire you to do, is to do the work, because you'll see that things that you may have thought were never possible actually are possible. And that is true. That's another theme I want to kind of get out there, is that anything you can think of as a possibility, anything is possible. You just have to figure out how to get there. And if you work on it hard enough, you will figure out the steps. The lessons will appear, and you will just have to rise up to each lesson and improve. And I think that's it. I think that's all I have for this video. So please give me a thumbs up to help with the algorithm. Subscribe if you don't already, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.